As an American, probably more than anywhere on earth, you will run into all kinds of people. You'll meet people who, if they just gave you 1% of their wealth, it could completely change your life. You'll also run into people who feel that way about you. You'll run into different races, colors, creeds, national origins, sexual orientations, gender identities, and even different musical tastes. I once had a job where I encountered a lifetime of those things every week I was there. I would leave work some days feeling like I was the poorest person I'd ever met. Other days I felt really fortunate for everything I had. Let's talk about my time in San Diego. Hey, so if you cross paths with me at any point when I was between the ages of 20 and 32, chances are I was living in one place and I was about to move somewhere else. I moved around a lot, and it was always trying to go from Austin to Denton, trying to go from Dallas to Austin, trying to go to somewhere, always. I finally figured out over time that the problem was I really thought that Austin checked all the boxes and it made sense for me, and I tried it over and over and over again, and it just never felt right. So I would want to get out of there, I'd move away, and I'd be like, oh, I got to give Austin another chance. And so at some point, I actually decided to leave Texas altogether. So in 2001, I tried to give California a chance, and San Diego specifically. So one thing that I did many times, every time I was going to make one of these moves, I was trying to find a job in the other place. And it's always hard. It's always harder. A lot of times your resume just gets looked right over as soon as they see the address isn't right down the street from them. You get the interviews, and then it's like you have to schedule it. You have to, like, in the case of California, you have to fly out there. And they don't want to pay for it. If they do, they're interested, but already you cost hundreds to over $1,000 more than anybody else does to interview. So I did this thing that I did about half a dozen times in my 20s, which is insane. And that is get impatient with the job search and just decide, you know what, I'll just move out there and then figure it out. So you move to this place and you put down a deposit and sign a long-term lease and pay first and last month's rent and have barely any money left. And really what that does is it puts a countdown clock, like self-imposed, that I have to find a job in like 3 or 4 weeks tops, or this whole thing is going to fall apart. And I don't know how, but out of all the times I tried that, it never blew up in my face. You could call what I was doing, if you're an optimist, you could say I was betting on myself. If you're a realist, it's called being an idiot. I would never do that. I can't even imagine how much money I would have in the bank to just say, oh, I'll just move to this place and figure it out. But I'm older now. So I tried that with San Diego, and I got moved in. And the first time I realized how difficult it was going to be to find a job, I was at a red light. And it was one of these that the traffic was bad enough that I had to wait through like 3 or 4 light changes. And, you'll see a homeless person who has a little sign up, the cardboard sign that's like, hey, down on my luck, or you'll get the one that's like the comedy guy that's like, hey, not gonna lie, I just want a beer or a joint or something. I looked and I saw a guy who was in a suit and tie, and he was holding up a cardboard sign. And I was like, oh, wow, homeless people really dress nice around here. And when I got up to the light and saw his sign, it said, software developer, San Diego State grad, 10 years experience, C++, Java, and he listed off like programming languages he knew. And he had 10 times the resume I had at that time. And he was having such trouble finding a job that he thought his best bet was to stand by the street with a sign up. And that's when I realized that this job market was way worse than anything I'd seen in Texas. So I got nervous. I was applying on Monster and Career Builder and all these websites. I wasn't hearing back from anybody. I got one phone interview and I didn't even come close to getting it. So I was getting very nervous. So finally I got a interview and I was like, I have to nail this. I have to get this job. So the job was for a company who did all the computer support for the county of San Diego. Looking into it, the county of San Diego is a huge place. It's 4,500 square feet. It goes all the way down to like the border with Tijuana. It goes up towards LA. They've got tons of suburbs, and it actually goes all the way out kind of into the desert where one part of the county can be 72 degrees and another part can be 105 degrees. It is a huge county, and it had 13,000 employees. It had over 100 offices. So it was a pretty big, it's not what I thought of as a county. It was much bigger. So I got the interview and I showed up. So I meet the person I'm going to be interviewing with, and he was terrifying. His name was Christian, and for most of the time I worked there, I thought he was a British guy. I thought he was from England. Turns out he was from South Africa, but he was very British. I don't care what he says. And now that I look back, he looked like and had kind of the air about him of the patriarch from Downton Abbey, but he was much meaner. He had a very British condescending vibe about him, and he just looked through you, and just what he saw inside of you, he thought was garbage. And still, I thought I could do okay with the interview. I needed the job, whatever, I'll figure it out. And so I go through the interview, it was going fine. And then when it got to the end, he listed off 5 things. And he said, I want you to rank these from most important to least important and explain why. And there were 5 things. It was like customer service skills, technical skills, a couple of other things. And then the last one, he said pre-field. And as soon as he said that, I had this knot in my stomach, because you're probably wondering, what is pre-field? That's what I was wondering. So I'm in the job interview and I'm supposed to rank this, and I don't even know what it is. So I ranked the 4 and explained them well of what I knew. And then when I got to the last of it, I said, I'm sorry, I don't know where to rank pre-field because I'm not sure if I know that term. Could you explain that to me? And he was like, no, that's okay. Okay, well, thanks for coming in. And he ended the interview. And I'm like, oh my God, out of all things, what is pre-field? And so I was about to walk out of the room, and he said, can you start Monday? And I was like, yes. And he said, okay, all right, well, thank you. Welcome aboard, and, congratulations. And I was like, oh, okay. And he was like, do you have any more questions for me? And I was like, yes. What is pre-field? And he said, well, that is an internal term that we use for the work that you're going to be doing. And I knew that you wouldn't know what it meant. It's a trick question. And every single person I've interviewed ranked it and tried to answer it and gloss over the fact that they didn't know what it meant. You actually told me that you don't know what it means, which means you're honest and I can trust you. So that's why you got the job. Okay, so there's something to be learned there about honesty. I don't think I've ever had a trick question to that level, but that was just dirty. And it wasn't some genius move on my part. I didn't know what else to do. I didn't think I could fake my way through it. So I got the job. And when I started work, every morning we would have a meeting, and there were about 40 people I worked with, and he would go around the room, and he was the meanest person. He was so brutal, and he would ask people the status of what they're working on, what they're doing today, where they're going, and no matter what their answer, he would just rip them to shreds. accept me. He never once gave me a hard time about one single thing. Every time I could tell him that I didn't show up yesterday and I screwed up, and he would have probably just been like, okay, thanks, Brad, and then go to the next person and then rip their head off. So that one little answer seemed to have bought me a ton of goodwill. So now, as far as the job itself, I found out what I would be doing is I would be going around to different San Diego County offices and doing the dumbest task that only a government office could come up with. What pre-field meant was someone said that they wanted a piece of software or a mouse for their computer or a keyboard or a printer. And my job was to go there with a little clipboard and a piece of paper and say, hello, it says here you ordered a mouse. And they would say yes. And I would look at the back of their computer and make sure the mouse they ordered would fit into that computer. If the software said Adobe Photoshop for Windows, I just had to make sure they had a computer with Windows, knowing that every single computer that county had Windows on it. So it was just bureaucratic red tape crap. And that was all I was supposed to do. And so really the job was to drive around and waste people's time. So every morning after this meeting, I go and I talk to a dispatcher person and they tell me where I'm going to be going for the day. And the first day they sent me downtown to the county administration building. They gave me an address. I have to look up and figure it out. I have to like print out directions. This is pre-Garmin days. It's 2001. And I find my way downtown and I find this building. And as soon as I see it, I realize it's one of the most like iconic buildings in San Diego. I'd seen this building a million times on TV. And it was absolutely gorgeous. I could not believe how beautiful this building was, and it was right on the water. You could see the Coronado Bridge in the background, and I had still just been in San Diego for I don't know 3 weeks, and so I hadn't really done that much. All I'd done is really unpack some boxes, go to the beach a couple of times, and I could not believe how beautiful this was. And as I was walking out, I was looking at the water and the sunshine there, and it was just gorgeous. And when I walked inside the building, it was almost even more impressive. It was a building from the 30s that just everything, all the railing was original wood. It was just gorgeous. When you would walk up the stairs, they had this like old-fashioned creak to it that when you would walk, and I just couldn't believe how beautiful it was. And I remember looking up in this lobby and thinking, I can't believe this is my life. This is just amazing. That feeling lasted about 3 minutes because there was a nice little coffee stand there. And there was a line. There was a couple of attorneys that were there, and they were ordering a latte. And I was normally like a coffee with a little bit of cream guy. But I had arrived, so you know what? I'm going to get a latte. And I got a vanilla latte, held it in my hand, turned around and bumped into somebody and dropped it. And when it hit the ground, it shot latte straight up. I had a white shirt on, and it covered me from my neck all the way down to my crotch. And I was completely covered in coffee. I hadn't yet been to my first appointment, which was in that building, and was in about 10 minutes. And I reeked vanilla. So now I had to walk up there just looking like an absolute slob idiot. And so I walk into this office, knock on the door, and I walk in. Now what was weird about this is I grew up in North Texas, and at that time I still had a very thick North Texas accent. And the thing that is very specific about North Texas that I now can pick out from anyone I hear talking is the flattening of the I. It's not I, it's ah. It never gets completed with the I. And I've lost most of my accent since I've been in New Jersey, but at the time You know, I still spoke with an I like that. And I walked into the office and I was like, I'm here to see Mike. And they kind of looked at each other like, what is happening? What's this guy's deal? And they were like, excuse me? I was like, yeah, it says here I'm here to see Mike. And they were like, we don't have a mock. And I was like, no, not mock. Mike. I'm like struggling to try to, and I know what I'm supposed to do, but I couldn't make myself do it. And that was the first of at least 100 encounters in San Diego where someone didn't understand what I was saying because of the letter I, the letter ah. And so I also quickly found that Californians equate that accent with you being a hayseed moron. And they just automatically think you're stupid if you talk like that. So I would say, oh, I'm sorry, I have an accent. I'm from Texas. That actually seemed to make it worse. They had zero tolerance for Texas in California, which is funny because I came to New York City where people are notoriously rude, and I never really had a problem with it. And people in New Jersey always kind of thought it was cool. California doesn't think it's cool. They think you're crap. And I had several times where I would be in a meeting and I would say something where I'd be like, oh, you know what you should do? You should install this, and then you'll do this, and I'll fix it. And they would be like, okay. And then somebody else would say, oh, I know what you should do. And they would repeat pretty much exactly what I said. And they would be like, oh, that's a good idea. So, yeah, that accent did me no favors in California. But yeah, that was my first day. But still, my first 5 days, I would say, I was sent to that administration building, and everybody there was generally happy. You had the fun security guard that would check in when you came in. He always had the same like canned jokes ready, and most of the people that were there to get marriage licenses or like building permits, and it was just a happy place. So, you know, from my time there, I would have thought, you know, wow, California is really happy. So it turns out that going to the county administration building was like the best place you could be sent. And the only reason they were sending me there at first was because someone else was on vacation. So when that person came back, I started getting sent to the places people didn't want to go to. And it was my second week there, I was sent to the clinic. And it was in one of the suburbs of San Diego. And I went to this horrible little building. And there was just junkie galore outside. There was a bunch of people that were mostly homeless people. Everybody was a mess. And I went inside and quickly found out that this was a place where they tested homeless people for HIV or tuberculosis. And my day there, I left so depressed. And I think anybody who could work there and not feel that way, there has to be something wrong with you. Like, it was so depressing. Like, everybody there was homeless. The amount of mental illness, the crazy things people were saying. They had to have a security guard police in the bathroom because people would be shooting up in the bathroom. It was the most horrible place I've ever been. And as the time I spent there, it seemed like every place I was sent was progressively weirder. So I spend the day there, and I feel like everyone is so poor, and it's just so depressing. And then the next day I show up and said, yeah, we need you to go down to the county courthouse. You have to meet with a judge. And so this was a very bipolar experience. So I've been around homeless people all day. And then the next day, I'm going to go to a judge. So I walk in, and I have to go to a judge's chambers. And he opens the door, and this office is just immaculate. And it's like all these just dark hues of wood, deep hues of wood. And you've got like this desk looks like it weighs like a metric ton. And it's just got like this golden Lady Justice on it. And then he's got this bookcase behind him that's just tons of like law books. And he just looks like someone who's read every single one of them cover to cover. And he's got this wall full of all these awesome degrees and pictures of him with politicians. And it's just, you know, this guy has got it made. And so I told him I needed to install some software for him. This is one of the rare times they let me actually install something. And he said, "Do you think this will be done in the next hour?" And I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "Your Honor." And I was like, "Excuse me?" And he said, "Call me Your Honor. I'm not sir, I'm Your Honor." And I'm like, I'm sorry, Your Honor. I'm sorry. And so no one's around. And apparently you have to call a judge Your Honor, even just in casual conversation. Like, I mean, come on, dude. I mean, there is no way I would be like that. I don't care how long I had to work. I mean, like, even doctors. I've made friends with doctors, and I called them Greg. I didn't call him Dr. Johnson. You know, like, seriously. So there was that, and then there was another time that I was sent to the courts, and there was a virus where we all had to install something kind of at the same time. Because if one of the computers got the virus, then all of them would get it all over again, even if we already cleaned it off. So we had to coordinate this. And I spoke to this judge, and he said that there was this case that he had really been struggling because they kept delaying it, and he's trying to get this thing over with. So he doesn't want to go to recess. So I actually ended up sitting at the judge's bench next to the judge while a child custody case was going on. And they just went ahead and had the trial while I was in the room sitting there. And it was quite awkward. But then the next day I was sent to the San Diego County Jail. I wasn't nervous about this. I wasn't worried about it because I figure, like, if it's dangerous, they wouldn't have me do it. And I guess I'd never been to jail before, still haven't, knock on wood. Not that I'd ever do anything illegal, but I imagined, you know, there are people there that are awaiting trial for murder, you know, all kinds of serious crimes. Surely they're like in a bunch of cells or something. But what I found when I got there is they just walked me right into Gin Pop. And I had a cop next to me, so I figure I'm okay. But yeah, these guys are all walking around and they're like looking me up and down. Like, I mean, these guys are just, their default setting is mean. And I didn't think I really had that much to worry about, but I definitely felt a little nervous. And one of the prisoners, he walked by and gave me one of those shoulder pushes into my shoulder. It actually really hurt. And the cop saw it and he was like, "Get back to your cell, Reggie." He didn't do anything to him. He just told him not to do that anymore. And I'm just like, oh my God, okay. All right, I don't want to go to jail here ever. And I was supposed to work on the computer that was kind of like a community computer that they took turns using for the prisoners. So I went into this room that was all surrounded by glass, and the cop asked me how long it would be, and I said, you know, probably 15 minutes. And he said, "Okay, I'll be right here." And he closed the door and locked it, and I was locked in. And it was a weird feeling because I just thought about how much smaller that room seemed, knowing that I was locked in. And I couldn't even imagine what it's like to be in jail there. And especially if you're there for like months, I can't even imagine. But yeah, that was pretty crazy. And then I would say probably the craziest place I went was after that. So my next place I had to go was the county morgue, which promised to be interesting. I got there, and just to make it a little creepier, it was kind of in a basement. And I got there, and first thing I saw was somebody walking by with a dead body on a gurney. I'm like, makes sense. I kind of psyched myself up for this, so I wasn't too thrown off. So I went into this little office. They showed me where to go, and I'm in there by myself. And this guy stops by to talk to me, who had no real reason to talk to me other than he was bored. And the only place where this guy could work and it would make sense is a county morgue, because he was the biggest creep. He walked in and was like, pretty weird, isn't it? I was like, oh, yeah. And he's like, bunch of dead bodies around, right? And yeah, he's weirdo. And but he ended up telling me a very cool story. Okay, I said cool. Okay, I mean cool. He said that 4 years earlier, he came to work, and there were a bunch of news vans outside. And I mean local news, national news, world news, CNN, whatever. Everybody outside with cameras set up. So he's like, oh man, I guess some celebrity died or something. And he got inside, and he said that the entire hallway was dead bodies. And it was like 39 of them. And he asked what happened. And I mean, initially he thought that there was like a plane crash. And they said, no, there was a mass suicide. And it turns out it was the Heaven's Gate cult. And so I was actually at the morgue where they took all the Heaven's Gate people, which is creepy, and I couldn't help but think that was super cool. But so yeah, that happened. One morning, I used to listen to Howard Stern on the way to work every morning. And I turned it on, and it was really weird because they kept talking about some plane that hit a building. So as you might guess, it's 2001. That was 9/11. And I listened to that for a few minutes. Unfortunately, they cut away and went to like national news where they were talking about what was going on. Because I went back and listened to the footage of Howard Stern, and that was actually really interesting to hear as that unfolded. I instantly felt so far from home. Like with all this going on, and there was a lot of bad information going around about, planes are still in the air. They said that one was headed towards Texas, and they thought it might be going towards Austin, where the state capital is, because George W. Bush was there. And my mom worked at the Capitol, so I just felt very out of control with everything that was going on. And I'm sure, of course, everybody felt pretty out of control with 9/11. I had a boss that was insistent that we continue to work that day, and he was really annoyed by anybody who wanted to watch what was going on TV. He sent me down to the county administration building. He made me force my way past the cops. Like they were locking the building down, and they were like, no, I really have to get in there. This is important. It wasn't important. I got in there, and of all things, there was a gigantic bomb threat while I was there. And we all had to evacuate, and it was really scary. And it turns out it came from within the building, and it was just one of the county employees. So if you were to ask me on September 10th, 2001, how confident I was that I would be in San Diego a year later, I would have given it maybe a 75-80%, which is pretty good for me at that time. I was starting to like it there. I think the main thing is I'd made some friends. I even made a friend from Texas. We could get together and slaughter the English language and repeat ourselves to everyone. And I met some really cool people there, and I was starting to like it. And then, of course, 9/11, that's going to make everybody unhappy no matter where they are. Being out there, like I've already said, I felt very far from home. But after that, it was almost like San Diego had been on its best behavior prior to 9/11. And as soon as anything crazy got thrown into the pot, like it really started to bubble up. Like there was a lot of crazy around me. I don't remember how long it was after 9/11. It wasn't very long. I went down to the county administration building, and there were a bunch of hippies, and they were all dancing around with bongos, and it was some kind of protest. And I found out that what they were protesting is they had caught two of the people who helped hatch the whole plan of 9/11. And it ends up that a lot of that planning and flight lessons and all kinds of stuff had gone on like 3 miles from my apartment. And they had caught a couple of the people who were involved in that and had been bankrolling it. And these hippies were protesting that they were holding these people and they should let them go. And I think that was the first time that it crossed my mind that hippies might be really stupid. So then it ends up that they were keeping those two guys at the San Diego County Jail where I was sent. And I was sent there again while they were there. I actually didn't see them. I'm sure they were probably in some kind of special place. I don't think they were very safe. I mean, if I wasn't safe in that jail and I was getting the shoulder push, I can't even imagine what they would get. So yeah, I felt way too close to that whole situation. And then there was a guy I worked with. I won't mention any names, even though I only know his first name, but I'm not even going to mention that because, yikes. So this guy kind of pulled me to the side and was like, he was like this surfer guy. He snapped at some old Muslim lady at work that was our customer. And I actually had met this lady a few times. I mean, she was like 70 years old, and he started yelling at her, calling her a terrorist. I can't confirm any of that. That's what my bosses told me is why they fired him. So he gets fired. So they didn't disable his email account in time. So he fired off an email to all of our bosses, all of the bosses at the county of San Diego, who that's our customer, and included people like the mayor and like the county commissioner on this email, and said that he was going to go to our main office and shoot the place up. And so I just avoided the main office. But you know what? They arrested him with a loaded gun in the parking lot. Once again, heard that from my work. Can't confirm any of it. Never saw anything in the news about it. But that's what my boss told us. So yeah, so this place was starting to crack. So I think the next level of craziness was a hoax anthrax envelope was sent to one of the San Diego County offices. It was at a place that I was supposed to go that day, and they had the whole thing shut off, and okay, it's getting crazy out here. And I know it was crazy in other places, and there was crazy stuff going on back in Texas, but I just wanted to be home. And so it was just getting worse and worse. And then Homeland Security started really taking hold. And my boss, Christian, he didn't have the right kind of visa to be in a government building anymore, so he wasn't allowed in the office. So those morning meetings where he'd yell at everybody, it was now just a speakerphone yelling at us, which I think some people were kind of relieved. But as soon as he wasn't in the office to intimidate people, I noticed that funding started going away from the County of San Diego contract and started going into other places. So it's like he wasn't there to fight with people to make sure that resources and money went to our contract. So suddenly my team of 40 became 30, and then it became 20. And as it started to go down, I knew that eventually I was going to lose my job. So that was when I was like, okay, it's time to end this experiment. I have to go back to Texas. So Made the plans for that. Got a moving company that was the only one I could afford, that basically you pack your own stuff in this 18-wheeler, and several people share the same 18-wheeler, and you push up this particle board and like nail it down, and then the next person puts their stuff in, and then they nail up a particle board, and then like 5 or 6 people have their stuff in this truck, and then they go across the nation and drop off some people's stuff in Arizona, some stuff in New Mexico, and then my stuff. So whatever this thing was, I signed some kind of waiver that was like, if there anything was damaged, I packed it, so it's my fault. So in the move back, everything I owned was destroyed because the particle board fell apart, and basically there was nothing I could do about it. I'd signed this waiver, basically don't even bother them because it's not their problem. Even though the particle board was like rotted or something was why it happened. So anyway, it's just crazy how fast that happened, because September 10th, I was, pretty sure I was going to stay there for another year. By January 1st, I was back in Texas. And, everything that led up to that, it was just every day the hits just kept coming. And one thing that was kind of the cherry on top looking back, every time I drove to work when I was in San Diego, I always noticed that there was this median on the highway that looked like it had been broken apart and put back together. Very shoddy work. And I never thought that much about it, but I was always like, man, that's pretty ugly. And I didn't find out until I got back that was actually done by the 1995 tank rampage, where a guy hijacked a tank and drove it around just running over stuff. So you've probably seen video of that. That's what caused that. And it was just kind of this reminder of the level of crazy that can happen in California. It's not just California. It's Florida, and it's Texas, and sometimes Wisconsin or Indiana or Washington or Oregon. I think I got them all. But yeah, it's a level of crazy that is just way too intense. So I went back to Texas, visited San Diego one other time since then. It's still beautiful. It's still awesome. I don't think I'd ever move back, but I did that. It was nice. Later.
Alone, my chambers, Lady Justice on an otherwise empty